Picture this. You're standing in a marketplace in ancient Rome, and you need to buy some bread. You reach into your pocket, but instead of pulling out coins, you grab a handful of salt. Yeah, salt. The same stuff you sprinkle on your fries just bought you dinner. Now imagine trying to explain to someone from that era that in the future, people would use literal pictures of dogs on the internet as currency worth thousands of dollars. They'd probably have you committed.
Money is weird, guys. Like, really weird.
We've collectively agreed that certain pieces of paper and metal have value. But throughout history, humans have used some absolutely insane things as currency. I'm talking about stuff that would make Bitcoin look normal. Today, we're diving into the strangest, most bizarre forms of money that people actually use to buy and sell goods. And trust me, some of these will make you question everything about our current financial system.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so imagine you're living on Yap, a tiny island in Micronesia sometime around 500 AD. Your neighbor owes you money. Instead of handing you some coins, he points to a massive limestone disc sitting in his front yard. This thing is literally 12 feet in diameter and weighs about 4 tons. That's yours now, he says. Congratulations, you're rich. You just can't move your money, ever. Welcome to the world of Rai Stones, possibly the most impractical currency ever invented, and yet it worked for centuries. These weren't just big rocks. They were massive circular stones with holes in the center, quarried from the island of Palau, located about 280 miles away from Yap. And here's where it gets interesting. The value of a Rai stone wasn't just determined by its size, but by the story behind it. See, getting these stones to Yap was an incredibly dangerous journey. Yapese sailors would travel hundreds of miles by canoe to Palau, carve these massive stones using primitive tools, then somehow transport them back across open ocean. Many men died in the process. So if your Rai stone had a particularly dramatic backstory, like say 3 people died bringing it to the island, it was worth more than a larger stone that had an easy journey. It's like if your $20 bill was worth more because the armored truck that delivered it to the bank got attacked by pirates. But here's the truly bizarre part. The stones rarely moved. They were too heavy to transport around the island, so they just sat there. Everyone simply remembered who owned which stone. It was a completely social, memory-based ledger system. No contracts, no receipts, just collective memory and trust. If you bought a pig from someone, you'd make the transaction and everyone would just know that particular Rai stone now belonged to the pig seller. And it gets even weirder. There's a famous story about a Rai stone that sank to the bottom of the ocean during transport. The crew survived and returned to Yap, and everyone agreed that the stone still had value even though it was sitting at the bottom of the sea and no one could see it or use it.
They still traded it.
Think about that. They were trading something that didn't physically exist in their world anymore. Sound familiar? That's basically how Bitcoin works, except instead of a stone at the bottom of the ocean, it's code on a blockchain. The Rai stone system lasted well into the 20th century. Even after Western money was introduced to Yap, people continued using Rai stones for major transactions like dowries and land purchases. Some are still used today for ceremonial purposes. There are over 6,000 Rai stones scattered across Yap, each with its own history and value, just sitting there like the world's heaviest cryptocurrency. Let's jump from the Pacific to medieval Russia, where things got equally weird but significantly fluffier. Between the 9th and 15th centuries, squirrel pelts were a primary form of currency in Russia and other parts of Northern Europe. And I'm not talking about using them as barter. These were standardized, legitimate currency with official exchange rates. Now, you might be thinking, okay, furs were valuable, that makes sense. But this wasn't about wearing luxurious coats. These weren't even particularly nice furs. These were literally just squirrel skins, treated and prepared in specific ways, functioning as money. Historical records from the 13th century show that a squirrel pelt was worth about 1/150th of a silver ruble.
You needed about 40-50 squirrel skins to buy a horse.
The system was so established that there were official terms for different denominations. A nogata was a unit of currency equal to 1 squirrel pelt. A kun was equal to 50 squirrel pelts. And here's my favorite detail. They also used viveritza, which were nose pieces cut from the pelts. That's right, they made change by cutting up the squirrel skins into smaller pieces. Imagine going to a store, buying something, and getting squirrel noses back as your change. The Russian Primary Chronicle, one of the oldest historical records from the region, mentions squirrel pelts as payment for tribute and taxes. In 859 AD, the Varangians collected tribute from various Slavic tribes, a squirrel skin from each hearth. The practice was so widespread that some historians believe the Russian word for money, shkurka, literally derives from the word for pelt or skin. But here's where this system gets problematic. Unlike gold or silver, squirrel pelts rot. They're organic material, susceptible to moths, moisture, and decay. Your life savings could literally be eaten by bugs. Imagine checking your bank account and finding out that moths had eaten 30% of your net worth. Also, the value would fluctuate based on hunting seasons. If it was a good year for squirrels, inflation would hit hard because suddenly everyone had more pelts. The system eventually collapsed as Russia integrated more with European trade networks, and silver became the dominant currency. But for several centuries, if you wanted to buy anything in large parts of Russia, you needed to show up with a bag full of dead squirrels. Medieval Russian accountants must have had the weirdest job description ever. And hey, if you're enjoying this journey through humanity's weird monetary choices, consider subscribing. We post videos about obscure historical topics every week, and honestly, some of the stuff we cover makes squirrel money look completely normal. Hit that like button too. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to know that our ancestors paid for things with rodent carcasses. All right, let's talk about Italy, specifically the Emilia-Romagna region, where to this day, yes, right now in 2024, Parmigiano-Reggiano cheese wheels are used as collateral for loans. This isn't ancient history. This is happening in the modern world, alongside credit cards and cryptocurrency. Here's how it works. Parmigiano-Reggiano cheese takes at least 12 months to age properly, with some wheels aging for 24 to 36 months. That's a long time for cheesemakers to wait before they can sell their product and make money. So Italian banks, specifically institutions like Credito Emiliano, accept cheese wheels as collateral for loans. The bank literally has warehouses functioning as cheese bolts, storing hundreds of thousands of wheels of cheese worth approximately $200 million. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine walking into a bank, and instead of a vault filled with gold bars or cash, you open the door to find floor-to-ceiling shelves stacked with 80-pound wheels of cheese, each one carefully monitored for quality, temperature, and aging. The Credito Emiliano Bank stores over 440,000 wheels of Parmigiano-Reggiano at any given time. They have entire floors dedicated to cheese storage, with climate control systems maintaining perfect aging conditions. This system started in the 1950s when the bank realized that cheesemakers needed financial support during the long aging process. The genius part is that Parmigiano-Reggiano actually increases in value as it ages. A wheel gets more expensive the longer it sits there, meaning the collateral becomes more valuable over time. It's like if your mortgage payment decreased every month instead of staying the same. But here's the catch: cheese can go bad. If a wheel develops defects during aging, maybe it cracks or bacteria contamination occurs, it loses value dramatically. The bank employs expert cheese inspectors who regularly examine each wheel, tapping them to listen for hollow sounds that indicate defects, checking for cracks, monitoring moisture levels. These people literally have job titles like cheese banker and collateral cheese inspector. If a cheesemaker defaults on their loan, the bank doesn't foreclose on their house, they keep the cheese. The bank then ages it, sells it, and recovers the loan amount. In fact, Credito Emiliano has its own cheese brand that they sell to recoup defaulted loans. You can literally buy foreclosed cheese in Italy. The system works because Parmigiano-Reggiano is strictly regulated with a protected designation of origin status. Only cheese made in specific provinces using specific methods can be called Parmigiano-Reggiano, which maintains its value. There's a whole consortium that certifies each wheel, stamping it with official markings that verify its authenticity. This isn't some quaint traditional practice that exists for tourism. It's a legitimate, regulated banking system that handles hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. The cheese wheels are insured, monitored, and treated with the same security protocols as any other valuable commodity. Modern Italy is out here treating cheese like Fort Knox treats gold. And honestly, if you've ever had real Parmigiano-Reggiano, you know they're not wrong. Let's travel back to Mesoamerica, around 1000 BC to the 16th century AD, where the Aztecs and Maya didn't just love chocolate. They used it as currency. Cacao beans were so valuable that they functioned as the primary small denomination currency across much of Central America. So there you have it, 7 of the strangest currencies that humans actually use to buy and sell things. From 12-foot stones that never moved to cheese stored in bank vaults, from chocolate fraud to money that melts in the rain, humans have proven that we can turn literally anything into currency, as long as we collectively agree it has value. The craziest part? We're still doing this. Our current money is just paper and digital numbers that only have value because we all believe they do. At least the Yappies had a massive stone. We're trading based on encrypted code and government promises. Who's really the weird one here? If you think about it, every currency system in human history has been equally bizarre. We just accept our current one because we're used to it. But show someone from 500 years ago a credit card transaction, and they'd be just as confused as we are looking at squirrel pelt money. The lesson here isn't that old currencies were stupid, it's that all currency is fundamentally a shared delusion. A beautiful, functional, society-enabling shared delusion, but a delusion nonetheless. The Yappies weren't wrong to use giant stones. The Aztecs weren't wrong to use chocolate. The Ethiopians weren't wrong to use salt. They were all just participating in their culture's particular version of the same financial fiction we're all living in right now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into humanity's weird monetary choices, check out our video on the craziest scientific experiments that were somehow legal. Trust me, it makes chocolate fraud look reasonable. Hit subscribe if you want more obscure historical content, and let me know in the comments what weird currency system you'd create if you could. I'll see you in the next one.